Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump prompts calls for unity.
Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence.
But with the political season ramping up, how has Trump's brush with death scrambled the race to be the next president of the United States? I'm Kevin Hirten, and this is The Take.
I was talking to my news editor on Sunday, and he said, "Oh my gosh, can you believe it? This day is so busy." And I said, well, fasten your seatbelt, because I think this is the beginning of 2016 all over again. And I think it's going to roll into another 4 years, at least, of pure chaos. My name is Kimberly Halkett. I'm the White House correspondent for Al Jazeera English. I'm about to start my day, and I'm not sure when it's going to end because they're bleeding from one day into the next, and I don't think it's going to stop.
So, Kimberly, things move pretty fast in this business, right? A week ago, the gloves were off, right? Post-debate fallout, the president was being asked to step aside. Then Saturday happens, and Donald Trump comes a few centimeters from being killed by an assassin's bullet. And it really does seem like we're in a completely new political reality this week.
A week ago, we were talking about Joe Biden and his poor debate performance and the possibility of him being pushed aside and who might replace him. And all of Washington was consumed by that. Nobody is talking about that now, not a single person. Everybody is consumed with the discussion about party rhetoric and the vitriol that has divided this country, and the prospect of the level of violence and where we are as Americans, and whether or not this temperature has reached a tipping point or if it's too late to bring it back.
Yeah, let's talk about the shooting. The shooter is a 20-year-old man named Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's a registered Republican from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. He was shot and killed by authorities during the incident. And so far, it looks like Crooks acted alone, right? And there's nothing yet on really his motive. Donald Trump, on the other hand, he was hit in the ear, hospitalized briefly, but was out. Some say he was out golfing the next day. So it looks like, at least physically, he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
From a news perspective, Kimberly, where do you see this story going?
Well, first of all, we don't know a whole lot about this shooter. And when it comes to lone actors, it's hard to figure out their motive. And so that's where a lot of the investigative work is going to take place from the police side and also from the journalism side. So right now, there's a lot of questioning going on about, from the police side, what his motive was. Obviously, it's going down the road of ideology. And that's a little bit confusing because he's technically a registered Republican, but his political background is very confusing. It's hard to figure out what angle this guy came from. And so I think law enforcement's looking at that, but also journalists are looking at that to try and figure out, who is this guy and what made him tick? And the fact that he's a lone actor means he didn't have a whole lot of friends. So there were no red flags and there were no friends for journalists to talk to try and get a clue about what led to this, who he was associating with. He wasn't a part of any clique or friend group.
And oddly, for a 20-year-old, he had almost no social media or online presence. So yeah, very tough to figure out. What about the political fallout on Capitol Hill? I expect there'll be an investigation, there'll be hearings.
Yeah, there'll be tons, because what I can tell you is, from a Secret Service and security standpoint, this was a massive failure. In fact, I've talked to my security sources, and they said that this is going to be studied for years.
Yeah.
Probably this is going to become a course in and of itself on what not to do. If you compare this to the Reagan attempted assassination and the Donald Trump attempted assassination, this is a polar opposite. This is everything what you should not do, from perimeter, from working with local police forces to evacuations. Everything was wrong. The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, and they
Zero
failed.
fail. Yeah, that's on their website. Zero fail.
Yeah, zero fail. And you know the iconic picture now, that indelible image of Donald Trump coming up, blood on his ear, fists clenched. Great image. Massive failure for the Secret Service, because he is supposed to be completely covered by the Secret Service when he is evacuated. The fact that his internal organs and head was uncovered when there is an active shooter possibly still present is the most egregious of all mistakes. That is the worst of the worst. That in and of itself is going to be discussed in Congress. We've already heard from Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, that he is going to hold hearings. The House Oversight Committee is going to hold hearings into what the heck happened.
How will this shooting impact the upcoming election? More after the break. All right, so Kimberly, let's talk about the politics here. I was kind of amazed by the reactions in the moment that this absolutely sealed Trump's victory in November. And you saw that online. I was personally getting texts from people all over the world, in India, South Africa, and they're probably just reacting to that now iconic photo of Trump with the flag that you mentioned earlier. Well, I'm wondering, what do you make of this take? Do you really think this shooting will be the deciding factor or a deciding factor come November?
No, I don't. I think that's people reacting to the emotion of the moment. I mean, It was incredibly shocking that Donald Trump did react that way, because I know most of us would probably still be curled up on the stage sobbing that we came that close to death. I don't think that's going to change things come November. And I also don't think that that will change things by Thursday.
Yeah.
People in this news cycle have very short memories. And so I doubt that this is going to affect them in any way. I think that certainly it'll have the impact on some voters, but I don't think it's going to be the deciding factor.
You talked about short political memories. You know, assassination attempts are not completely new. Teddy Roosevelt was shot. He finished his speech and then still lost the election to Woodrow Wilson. Gerald Ford in the mid-'70s survived 2 assassination attempts and then still lost in 1976. But what this does do is I think it clarifies political violence isn't just part of our past. It's been here in the present. And, you know, political violence and specifically the fear of political violence are very much an aspect of modern Washington.
Yeah, it's part of every day. And I would be lying if I didn't say that my friends and family worry about me and worry about me at my job. I've been scared doing my job many times. I've been scared when I've had death threats. I've been scared when there have been protesters trying to scale the gates of the White House. And I'm scared because there are just people that hate the media. The bottom line is that there's so much hate in the United States. People who disagree in the United States now want to kill each other.
Yeah.
They don't want to find common ground. And that is terrifying. And so as a result, you live with the fear that people who are already feeling things are so difficult in the US now because money's tight, salaries have not risen with prices. So people are strapped. They're struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to buy food. And they're struggling to pay their mortgage or their rent and their heating bill. And then they have to commute 2 hours to get to their job. And then they have a minor disagreement online. And then they go out and somebody says one little thing that they perceive, even if it was unintentional, as being some sort of slight or disrespect in some way. And the next thing you know, they're drawing a gun.
Wow. So even before this shooting, the theme of the Republican National Convention, which is going on this week, was going to be strength versus weakness, right? A strong Trump juxtaposed against a weak Biden. And you have to imagine that these images of Trump are going to be just played on a loop the whole time. The tragic circumstances aside, the timing really could not have been more fortuitous for the convention organizers, at least.
Right. And, you know, that might have worked a week ago for Joe Biden. But while they are going to get an incredibly strong Donald Trump, there's no question that's an indelible image, blood dripping, fist clenched. But Biden has his own strength. And his campaign is fully aware of the opportunity that the president has right now. And they are taking advantage of it in a very delicate and yet very astute way. Typically, a week ago, you would have heard the Biden campaign referring to Donald Trump as the other guy and taking really negative attacks. They're not doing that right now because the American public wouldn't stand for that. But what they are doing is looking compassionate towards Donald Trump and also using the power of the office, the Oval Office address, something that's only reserved for times of war, the most gravest of circumstances.
Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot.
When Joe Biden made that address, he made a heartfelt address. He used the gravitas of the office. That gave him the opportunity to look presidential and powerful and gave him the strength that he needed. So no matter how weak he may have looked a week ago, he's picked up some steam in the strength department.
Interesting.
And his campaign is hoping to continue that wave.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. You're saying that this actually has scrambled the politics in a way that might benefit Joe Biden, because there is a downside to the way that this convention could play out, right? It's no doubt supercharged enthusiasm among the MAGA faithful, but they're already in the bag, right? To win, he needs to win over these swing voters, suburban women who have kind of left the Republican coalition. These are the voters who might want to see the temperature taken down, and maybe Biden has a chance to do that, and the speakers at the Republican National Convention won't be able to resist ratcheting it back up. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Exactly. Now, Biden has a tiny bit of a problem, but they're so far playing it pretty well. And that is, on July 8th, he was captured saying, let's put a bullseye on Trump in a private donor call. The campaign so far has not acknowledged that. If he can ride this out, and so far their strategy has been to not acknowledge this, if he can get away with this and let it die down, he'll be okay. But if this becomes a thing, then he's finished.
Okay, so Kimberly, it didn't take long for Republicans to specifically blame Biden's rhetoric, right? That includes J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator who's now Trump's vice presidential pick. He said on X, quote, "The central premise of Biden's campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination." What do you make of that?
Let's be honest. I mean, the Biden campaign has been clear that this is about contrasts. It's about the future of democracy. How MAGA supporters take that is up to them. But the bullseye comment, that's a whole different animal.
Do you think it's possible that the most lasting impact of this shooting will be that it gave President Biden the political oxygen to stay in the race for good?
100%. I think you're right that the political oxygen is the exact way to describe this. Joe Biden's candidacy is back, and it has an energy and an oxygen that I don't think anyone was expecting. And I believe that if he handles this properly, that Oval Office address is exactly what he needed to get it on the right track. Quite frankly, if his press handlers had just left him alone and let us engage with him as journalists the way we should have been able to for the last 4 years, none of his problems would have happened in terms of this whole mystique around the president, that he is feeble and falling apart. The fact that we had no access to him is how this all got started. If we can't see him, we're going to speculate. And that's what happened.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Khaled Soltan and Sarí el-Khalili, with Duha Mosaad, Manahil Naveed, Veronique Eshaya, and me, Kevin Hirten, in for Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Joe Plourde mixed this episode. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.